and welcome to Trucking Along with Kiersey. That's me, your positive voice in trucking. Yeah, I'm gonna move that down. If you're considering leasing, then there are some things that you need to understand. You have to acknowledge, you have to make sure you read your contract and know what you're getting into. And what I don't like about leasing is that most people have no clue what their contract says. They have no clue how any of this works, and they don't even have, anything to compare it to. So today I'm going to talk about the contract at Prime and the way things work at Prime. But if you're considering leasing at another company, you should watch this too, because you can take the information to whatever company you're looking at and ask them questions and see, well, does it work this way here? Is this what my contract says? And, have a better informed decision. Make a better informed decision. So stick around. Okay, the first thing that lease ops tell me is, well, it's a walk-away lease, and I'm proud I'm a lease op. Yeah, okay. First off, you're proud. That's as stupid as saying I'm proud I was born with blue eyes. It's not an accomplishment. I was given it. I was born with blue eyes. You're getting a lease from your company, and you're signing that contract that they allow anybody to sign. Not because you're accomplished, not because you're skilled, not because you're a great business person or a great driver, because they're allowing brand new drivers to do these leases. So you have no accomplishment. So get off the I'm proud crap, okay? And when it comes to the walkaway lease, you're right. It's a walkaway to the point where you're not responsible for the truck. It's not yours anyway. They're taking it back. It's not going on your credit, but if you had credit, you wouldn't be leasing from the company anyway if you could find a better deal someplace else. So, and I'm not saying that everybody's like that, but there are a very high percentage of people that will come into these companies and they might not have been interested in getting their own truck before, but then they start seeing all these experienced drivers and experienced trainers that have been doing this for years, and they're looking at their numbers going, wow, that's great, but they don't even realize what those numbers entail. And they didn't even have the information to be able to say to those people, hey, show me these numbers on your settlement so I can see what you're actually making in profits. And just because it's walk away doesn't mean that if you're in the hole, you're not going to pay Prime back that money that you owe. If you had, say, 2 weeks that you did really lousy and you're in the hole, you owe that money. Absolutely. And even if you decide to go to a company driver, you're still going to have to make payments weekly to pay that money back. I know company drivers that went from company to lease and then couldn't make it money, and they went back to company, and now they're paying, and they're like, man, it was the worst thing I ever did. So take into consideration that the walkaway lease is also walkaway for Prime too. If you do not abide by your contract, which is keeping it up to DOT standards and keeping it DOT compliant, not changing the safety features. There are a lot of lease ops out there that will start changing their governor so that they can run faster. They deactivate the on-guard sensors by covering up the cameras. There are things that they do to the truck, and that makes no sense to me, because especially if you've had this truck for a couple years and your lease is almost coming up, and then your lease completion bonus would be coming up, and they could turn around and take the truck from you, and they don't have to, you've reneged on your part of the contract, so they could keep all that money you invested over the years. So think about that. That leads me to the lease completion bonus. Now, this is money that you gave them cents by cents over the years. Okay, the more miles you drive, the more money you have to pay in excess miles charges. So they kind of put that in a fund, and then they give you the interest on it. So when you complete your lease, they give you that money back. Now, if you walk away, you don't get that money back. You'll get money that's in your emergency fund, which is separate. That's your money. But the money that's in the contract, as far as, it'll say like, everybody's contract's different. It depends on how many miles you run. But they might say, well, you put, say, 2 cents a mile in the tire fund, and then you have to put 5 cents a mile for, you know, for excess miles funds. It's sort of like when you lease a car and you might only have a certain amount of miles every year, like say it's 12,000 miles a year. When you go to turn that car in, you're expected to pay. And what Prime does is they take it mile by mile, and then at the end, they basically refund you what you might have overpaid, or, you know, at the completion of lease, they say, oh, you could have gotten this bonus. And some of the people have told me that they've gotten $36,000 at the end of their 3-year lease. I had a friend that had a 2-year lease. He was supposed to get $18,000. They kept $7,000 because in your contract it says that they'll use a certain amount of money to restore the truck back up to a sellable standard. So if you have scratches, if you, for every drill hole you make, they might say, okay, we're going to charge you $70 per drill hole. So somebody that has televisions and Game Boy systems and speakers all over, one guy put stickers all over his truck, and it was $2,000 for them to sit there and scrape the stickers off the inside of the truck. That's just immature anyway. He shouldn't have had a lease. And leasing is actually a business. You have to have business sense. You have to understand revenue. You have to understand operation costs, net revenue, and then the taxes. And you're not just talking about regular taxes. You're also talking about IFTA taxes, the fuel taxes. And each state, it's a quarterly there's a quarterly report that comes out and tells you what the tax is for each state. That in itself is really confusing, and I had to ask somebody that really knows what he's talking about. You're not actually getting charged per gallon. You're getting charged for the miles that you drove through the state. And some states will charge it, and then they figure out, okay, well, he drove, say, 100 miles through the state of Pennsylvania, we'll say. And then they sit there and figure out how many gallons of fuel you used to drive those 100 miles. So say at 8.5 gallons, miles per gallon, basically. So 8.5 miles per gallon, you divide 100 by the 8.5, you come out with like 26 or 28 gallons that you would have used to drive that 100 miles. So then the state of Pennsylvania then charges you 72 cents for every gallon that you drove through the state. Another thing that you have to understand is you're going to have variable costs and fixed costs. Fixed costs are going to be your truck payment is the same every week. Your APU payment is the same every week. You're going to have the same insurance payment. You're going to have, you know, the Qualcomm, at Prime you get charged the Qualcomm. You get charged for your settlements. You get charged $1 every time you go through a weigh station and you get the pre-pass beeping. You get charged for the navigation system in the Qualcomm, for the phone app. You just get nickeled and dimed to death, I swear to God. And of course you have to pay tolls. So the lease ops I was talking about, the lease ops say, oh, well, I want to choose my routing. They choose the routing to avoid the tolls, which sometimes takes a lot longer. You're going through slower roads for most part. So those are some of the things you have to take into consideration that you're paying. And then you have variable costs, which the majority of that is going to be your fuel, your tolls, and the things you're buying for your truck. I met one guy who told me that he gets his truck washed every single week. And I was like, that's crazy. That's a lot of money. He said to me, no, Prime pays for it. No, Prime advances the money to the wash place, but then they take it out of your settlement. He didn't believe me. I had to show him on his settlement exactly where Prime was charging him to wash his truck. And it was ridiculous. Like, he was paying like $150 a month or $80, you know, something like that. And then he was getting the bright stuff on his tires and the Rain-X and all this stuff and all these add-ons, thinking that he was getting it for free, and he's not. They take it from you later. So understand what you're paying for, and you have to really look at the fuel costs. It makes more sense to say fuel in Ohio, where the price is cheaper, than to drive into Pennsylvania and fuel there, where it's going to be like maybe 40 cents a gallon more. You know, and I talked about in another video, you know, it makes more sense to fuel someplace cheaper and pay for the shower at a truck stop you like than to spend all that extra money on fuel at the truck stop you like. Because I'm serious, like some Petras, I know there's one in Carlisle, PA. It's 46 and 56 cents a gallon more than the Flying J up the street. That's crazy to me. Okay, another thing that you have to be aware of, you have no workman's compensation as a lease op with the prime contract as it is. Now, I don't know if there's a way that you can sign the contract and pay into that, but as far as I know, there's not, and I don't know how you would have to go look for companies that would give you some kind of disability. It's probably going to be like AFLEC or something that would cover an accident or some kind of insurance covering disability type of situation. I know lease ops that had injuries and then couldn't even get up into their truck, had a back problem, no health insurance, no workman's comp, and couldn't get in the truck to drive to make money. Couldn't even afford the $55 at the Prime Motel. So, like, I was rooming with other people and even staying on somebody else's truck. To me, that doesn't sound like a good life. That doesn't sound like a good life. And then you also have to understand that if you go and get health insurance and the disability and the life insurance and all that, you're not buying it through Prime's company plan. You know, if you go through your own home state, it could be $500, $600, $700 a month. When I looked into leasing and I looked into the health insurance in New Jersey, a plan that was comparable to the one I have at Prime was $800. Now, somebody told me that Prime does have something set up so that they'll tell you how much the price is, and you're basically paying what they would pay on their portion too. So you're paying the employee and the employer portion, but it's basically the same insurance. I'm not sure if that's true. So if you are a lease op or you're thinking about it, make sure you get in contact with somebody at Prime. There is a health insurance little office for lease ops in the campus inn, and you should know where that is. Okay. Something that nobody talks about. This is really important. Nobody talks about. The lease op is responsible for the load if they damaged it or caused it to be rejected. I'm talking tens of thousands of dollars, $50,000. You know, if you have a hard brake event and you didn't put your load locks in properly and Walmart rejects it, or that meat goes flying all over the back of the trailer and it's $50,000 or $60,000, you are responsible. The accident insurance does not cover it because the cargo insurance only covers accidents. It does not include anything that you did. That's negligence. If you set the reefer for the wrong temperature and don't realize it, that's negligence. If you go to a meat plant and open up the trailer and don't realize you're at a processing plant instead of a packaging plant, you could actually contaminate meat, and therefore you'd be responsible. I even know a guy who was an experienced driver, a Team TNT trainer, who had been a lease op for years, and he didn't secure the floral load properly. He said he put in 5 load locks, and I guess he needed 6 because he lost like $7,000 he had to pay in damages for some of the flowers that had fallen over and gotten damaged and rejected. So these are things that you really have to understand and know about. Another thing is that when new people go to leasing, they sometimes fall behind and they'll get in the hole. And because they're new, they can't train to get out of the hole. So what do you do when you fall behind like that? You know, The next thing that they want to do is they want to turn around and then bring another rookie on their truck. Now, I did a video saying that most likely as a new driver, you're going to have an accident. And if you bring a new driver on your truck, they're most likely going to have an accident. So as the lease op, you're not only paying for that person's wages and employer taxes and workman's comp and health insurance benefits and whatever Prime's normal portion would be if that person was a company driver, the lease op is now responsible for. And in addition to all of that, okay, when that person hits something, you will be responsible for the deductible. Now, it's $1,000 for the truck, $500 for the trailer, $500 for the cargo. So if you have a serious accident, it could be $2,000. Now, that doesn't include negligence, which is another issue that nobody ever talks about. If you hit a bridge, that's negligence. Prime can hold a $10,000 deductible above your head. I have a friend who is a TNT trainer and her student jackknifed. Prime deemed it negligent. They kept the $10,000 from her, and 6 months later, after they reviewed the whole situation and whatever happened legal-wise, because I'm pretty sure there were other cars involved, she got the money back, but they took it for that 6 months. And, you know, $10,000 is a lot of money. She was in the hole for a few weeks, and her students wound up getting paid, and she wasn't. So this is something you have to be aware of. You have to be prepared for. You need to make some kind of preparations. Have a bank account where you're putting emergency money in. They call it an e-fund at Prime, an emergency fund. So have money stashed away so that you can be prepared for any kind of deductibles, any kind of repairs. Just because you don't hit anything doesn't mean your truck might need to go in the shop. And even though it's under warranty, you're still going to need to pay for a hotel. You have to pay for the tows. So I have a friend who the tow was $700, and they put the truck in the shop for like 4 days. And as per your contract, you do get like $250 for downtime, but she had a male on the truck, so she had to get a hotel room for herself, a hotel room for him, pay the tow. There's a lot involved that you have to be aware of, and it's better to be aware of it going in than to be like just smacked in the face with it. It's just crazy to me. So those are some of the things that I think you should really consider. Another issue that I see new drivers doing is instead of looking at the revenue and the miles, they only look at the revenue. So I know lease ops that would rather take a 3,000 mile load at $3,000 than take a 1,000 mile load for $2,000. And it's like, wait a minute, you don't even realize you're not making any money off of that higher revenue load because you're running more miles. And I've tried to bang this into some people's heads and they just don't listen. But you have to figure out what your operation costs are and then figure out what the load is paying. I know people who've told me that their operation costs are like 60, sometimes 70 cents a mile. Now, maybe they don't, maybe they're not as thrifty as other people when it comes to the fuel, but if you need 70 cents a mile just to get your truck running and to operate, then you have to figure out how much do I want my loads to be that I'll accept. And lease ops, one of the reasons that they want to go lease is so that they can accept loads and reject loads. But if you don't know where the freight is, then do you really know what loads you should be accepting or rejecting? I'm so against leasing as new people because you're trying to do two things. You're trying to, number one, learn how to drive this big truck that could kill people. And the other thing is you're trying to learn how to run a business at the same time. And those two things can really be difficult when you're trying to do them together. And so I've seen people tell me that they were in jeopardy of losing their houses and losing their wife. And I've loaned loaned lease ops money to pay for groceries or even like prescription drugs because, you know, they don't have it. Some of them don't have it. And I'm not saying that everybody is in the hole, but it really breaks my heart when I see brand new lease ops that will be on the Facebook group saying, man, I'm only making $800 a week. And last week I was in the hole and I made $800 this week. And, you know, it's not working for me. And then the company drivers are being mean and they're like, well, I'm never in the hole. And I'm not even in the hole when I go home. You know, so you really have to understand this is a business. You need to learn how it all works. You need to understand, you know, profit. Profit is not that $230,000 you saw on somebody's settlement. That's their gross revenue. And then after that, they have $150,000 in operation costs. So they're coming out with $80,000, $85,000, $90,000, something like that. And then they have to pay their taxes. And they don't have health insurance. They don't have 401k. So you have to understand this stuff and don't rely on, oh, well, at the end, I'm going to have X amount of money as a bonus, because depending on how well you treat your truck, no, you won't. You know, they're going to keep at least, you know, something, $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, depending on how well you keep your truck running and how you keep the maintenance on it. So my suggestion is 30 days before you turn in your truck, you make sure you get an inspection on that truck. Take it into Prime, schedule an inspection, and ask them, what do I need to do to bring this up to standards before I turn it in? And most likely it's going to be a lot cheaper for you to fix it ahead of time than for them to withhold your money. So, and yes, I am company driver, but I've looked into all this and I decided, to me, it wasn't worth the risk. It really wasn't worth the risk for me. Now, there are some people that are going to say, yeah. I also have good friends that told me, you know, as a solo driver, he says it's not worth it. I have 2 lease op friends that have been doing this for years. One guy's been driving for 25 years, and he teams with his wife. Now, teaming with his wife, he makes decent money because they're both making money. And she gets the health insurance, and then they're both covered. But, you know, if you're single, you're going to need to keep teaming to keep yourself, like, in that, you know, in the amount of money that you want to be in that comfort zone of money you want to be in. And there was something else I wanted to say. You have to keep teaming. I don't remember. Oh, another issue is home time. People want to go lease because they say, oh, I'm going to be home. A lot of lease ops don't go home. This is my customer. Thanks for chucking along. Like, share, comment below. Bye.